Hi there, my name is Rich Waterman, and I want to talk to you a bit about fear. Uh, it's really been interesting the last couple of months to see how different parts of my life have all kind of come together into one space, and they've come in the space of fear, and it's really interesting. So, if I look back at my biology degree, one of the things we looked at was evolution. And one of the reasons that Homo sapiens or humans became such successful was that we start to form social groups and tribes, which actually massively increased our chances of survival. And those versions or variants of Homo sapiens that had this part in our brain that kind of naturally wanted to group were the ones that survived. And what's happened is that there's a certain part of our brain, our limbic brain, that's very important for survival. And that limbic brain, amongst other things, generates this adrenal response, which is, you traditionally might know it as fight and flight, but it's actually fight, flight, and freeze. So these are reactions, instinctive, unconscious reactions that were a development of our brain that actually enabled us to survive. So we could perceive threats like, there's a saber-toothed tiger over there, or that's a big drop, I need to be careful going close to the edge of a cliff, etc., etc. Now, what's interesting is, obviously, that survival brain, that limbic brain, has persisted for thousands of years since that kind of early times when actually it was really, really important. Whereas now that part of our brain is kind of, like I say, partially important. It's almost like a bit of it's a car alarm, but it's a bit faulty. And so what's happening is it's almost like the limbic brain is going looking for work. And this is where this fear stuff attaches to some more recent work I've done, which I call my soul liberation work, which is kind of a coaching angle. And that all comes together with some old phobia stuff that I used to do. So many years ago, when I was sort of very, very much starting out in the realms of personal development and coaching, and I'd done some early Tony Robbins events, I became really interested by kind of how was Tony, for example, doing what he was doing. And he uses a techniques called neuroassociative conditioning, which are really a development of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I went away and studied NLP. I studied practitioner, master practitioner, and trainer. And one of the parts of those studies was phobia cures. We were taught phobia cures by Dr. Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. And I became fascinated by them because I love the fact that you could do some techniques and suddenly someone's fear would move from here to right over here, and 10 out of 10 freaking out having a spider in their hand to like absolutely cool 0, 1, 2 out of 10 fear. And for about 2 or 3 years, that's all I did. I was phobia cures. I became really good at them, developed my own techniques, adapted other ones, and didn't have a failure. There was only one person that I wasn't happy with the outcome, where we got their fear of lifts or elevators down to about a 2 out of 10. And normally at that point you should be testing it, and he didn't want to, even though I'd warned him at the start that that was the deal. So then you bring this kind of limbic survival stuff together with phobia cure techniques, with kind of spiritual coaching. And the mistake that I made when I cured phobias was that's all I did. I would cure their phobia and I'd send them off cured. But what I hadn't considered was, if you can release that kind of fear that's been attached to their soul, if you can release that, then that creates a huge amount of possibility. So now when I do phobia cures, I offer people the opportunity to do some follow-up coaching to explore, releasing kind of that bind or constraint, or getting that weight off your shoulders. It's often very, very useful to do coaching in terms of, okay, now what's possible? What can you create having removed these constraints? Anyway, so more recently, I listened to a gentleman called Peter Crone. You should look him up. First name Peter, Crone, Crone. And he was talking about how, in his opinion, people kind of have these fear responses. I've kind of added this bit about being gripping onto the soul. And a lot of their life was reacting to it. So I then sort of listened to this podcast he had with Johnny Wilkinson, the former rugby player. I then became really interested about, so how does this all fit together? So for me, if you look at what ways you can respond to fear, so you have this kind of pure, beautiful, universal soul. you have this fear attached to it. Common fears, really common fears, certainly according to Tony Robbins, and I agree. Fear I'm not enough, fear I won't be loved. Well, those fears come from being part of a tribe. Is be valuable, so I want to be enough, and be loved, so they'll get kept in the group. Then I'll survive. So it's death. If I'm not enough and I'm not loved, I'll get kicked out of the group. I'll die. So if you think you got your soul and you attach these fears of fear I'm not enough and fear I won't be loved, even though they're made up, they feel really, really real. You then got 4 responses to that. You've got fighting, 4 Fs. Fighting, you'll react to the fear and you'll prove it wrong. So I'm going to prove that I am enough. I'm going to fight. I'm going to work. I'm going to grind. I'm going to hustle. A lot of friction involved in that, a lot of heat. Not necessarily good for the soul, right? It doesn't necessarily feel good, but you will prove you'll be a fighter all your life, and you'll probably have periods of exhaustion. Number 1, fight. Number 2, flee. Get away from it. Avoid it. Run away. So then you're driven by reacting away from pain. That's not a very nice life, a life of flight or fleeing. Number 3 is freeze. So it's not safe to go somewhere new or explore. I'm just going to stay put. So that when you procrastinate a lot, or you've got these ideas about where you want to build your business or go out there and express yourself, and you don't feel able to do it. That's freezing. That's a fear response as well. And then the 4th one is folding. And by fold, I mean that you're capitulating. You're giving in to the fear. You're owning it in the victim state. I am not enough. I'm going to prove I'm not enough. I'm going to do drugs and alcohol and be homeless, or it doesn't have to be as extreme as that, but you might buy into that fear. You make it part of your identity. So those are the 4 things. So a lot of my work now, as well as doing just pure phobia cures, and if you want one of those, please give me a shout and I'll let you know how to do that. But a lot of my work is helping people to release that fear from their soul, to dissolve it, as Peter Crone would say, and then to explore massive possibility and creation, because that then gives you the 5th F, which is freedom. And by freedom, I mean choice. It means you can choose to respond, how you respond to your life, as opposed to reacting. If anything of this has been interest for you, please let me know. I'm going to run a workshop soon on the four Fs and then the 5th F, which is what you all want, freedom. But if this resonates with you, this is something I'm going to be working with in my Mindset Toolbox group, which is a membership group. Or if it's one-to-one's more your thing, then drop me a message. Bye for now.